Hey everybody, welcome to Fall Talk. Brian Good here. I'm going to take you through a couple things. One being the trend here in the short term, then we'll get into the longer term, and then I'll wrap it up for those of you that want to stick around and watch the video. The latest from the Japanese model, the winter outlook that just came out from that. Today, clouds streaming in. These are high-level clouds already, allowing for a nice sunrise, but hazy sunshine and pretty much all overcast later. This is a little impulse, a little pressure moving in that southwest flow in our area. It's going to help pump in not only moisture, but the warmer air that'll move in here, especially tomorrow. Now, it looks like the rain is going to hug the Ohio River later on for tonight, but it's moving into an even drier atmosphere than where it is now. So that's going to put a strain on how much moisture is going to be able to survive to the ground level. But having said that, we got to have the rain chance in the forecast just because the energy is there. But keep in mind, the amount of moisture is going to be limited. It'll kick in as early as sunset, I should say, just to our south and west of Louisville. Off and on through the game. Can't roll it out. Spotty showers shouldn't last long, but can't roll it out. Be prepared. Overnight showers, maybe some drizzle for the overnight period. And then tomorrow, rapidly improving weather. As that impulse moves away, we'll get some drier air, even more so, moving back in. And that'll get us up to about 80 for the high. And then even as we into Sunday, nice looking day. There is a front. You see a hint of it. The model ends here. But you can see a hint of that front trying to drop in from the north. It looks like it's going to mainly impact around Cincinnati. So we've taken the rain chance out for now, as I don't see much of an influence on our weather. In fact, it looks quite warm. Speaking of that, here are the models as we head into early next week. As very interesting setup remains here with a ridge of high pressure building into our area. This is the GFS, Euro, and here's the Canadian, and the ensembles of those models at the bottom. Also notice the weakness here, the lower pressures of the tropical wave across the Bahamas and the Caribbean. We'll be monitoring that for later next week. But either way, it does show the good agreement here on the amount of warmth coming our way, and that's why we got to look at the record potential then, because again, the models are putting us in the 80s, but we also got to keep in mind if we don't get much rain, and we haven't had much rain, we can overachieve in temperature, and that's what we're going with 84 on Monday, which likely will fall short of the record. But Tuesday, that one is in jeopardy. Record is 86. Tuesday looks to be the warmest day of this stretch coming. And if there's going to be a day we could break it, it would be that day. In fact, 87 may not be warm enough if some of the data is right. I wouldn't say 90. Boy, it could be awful close. All right, so then after that, Wednesday. Now, Wednesday, we were betting on the idea of that it would be a little slower idea of the front moving in Wednesday, so we likely get another day of warmth, perhaps record warmth Wednesday. But the models have come in a really good agreement that Wednesday is going to be now a transition day from warmer weather to cooler weather. So we may actually get our high near 80 early in the day, and we may actually see temperatures fall a bit. And what is going to happen here, this is a very odd and interesting setup at the same time, as this trough digs into the Ozarks and the Tennessee Valley Wednesday and Thursday of next week, low pressure is going to develop in response to that, something we see very often more in the wintertime. At the same time, remember, we have these lower heights in the Caribbean, tropical influences here. This is going to get funneled into this low pressure as it develops. So then the question becomes, is the system going to be able to remain in the flow and get transient, in other words, keep going to the east, or is it the main flow going to be retreating back to the north, and this low then gets cut off, has nowhere to go, and then we're back to another cut-off low-pressure scenario, which is never fun around here because they stick around for days, it seems like. And both situations are still on the table. In fact, you'll see that. Here's the evolved setup here on the models. Now, I don't have the Canadian showing you here on here to show you, but here is the GFS. It shows the low slowing down. It's beginning to already get cut off from the main flow. The main flow is already leaving it behind, so it's already slowing down. Begins against counterclockwise flow, beginning to kick up all that moisture and begin to wrap itself up. Meanwhile, the Euro is still trying to keep it in the main flow and make it a little more progressive. Completely the opposite of what these models had yesterday at this time when I was talking to you guys. The Euro was slower, more of a cutoff deal, and the GFS is more progressive. Now they're flipped. So it's obvious that the models are having a very tough time figuring out how this is going to evolve and it's going to get cut off low or not. All I can do at this point is tell you potential because it is so far out. But it is an interesting setup, especially with the tropical influence, because this could really influence not so much our weather when it comes to heavy rain, but the Carolinas, an area that does not need it, could very well find themselves once again in a heavy rain zone if that sets up. So a lot of eyes will be on this setup here next week. In addition to that, we get into about next weekend, the 22nd, 23rd, I believe it is. Here's the GFS again. Here's the low, cut off completely, nowhere to go. Euro already has it moving out. The ensemble is not a lot of help this far out. They really smooth out all these details, and the details are so specific and minute that the outcomes are dramatic, but what can change the outcome is very, very small, and the ensembles just can't really pick up on that yet. So they're not really advisable to use at this point. But I will show up toward the end of the month. It's interesting to see that the GFS, which is the only one you can see out really that far in detail, does show another strong trough digging in, which would get us toward Halloween. We'll see how that plays out. All right, Japanese model. Let's talk about that. The JAMSTEC, as we refer to it in the meteorology land, came out with its, once a month, comes out with its outlook for the long range, including the winter. Here are your temperatures. This is the October update, just came out today. Now, the August-September outlooks, when they came out, they are also warmer. The last time we had a colder than normal winter showing up from the JAMSTEC model was July. And that's the July one on the right. So let's look at some differences here. Here are the ocean temperatures. Left is the latest forecast for the upcoming winter, showing more of a, what we call a Meduki type of El Nino, some cold water pulling in the Central Pacific. It still has the warm waters in Alaska, which is key, because if you have warm water all the way to the Pacific Ocean into the Gulf of Alaska and the Aleutian Islands, that is important because that creates a ridge, which in turn can create a trough into our area, which could lead to colder weather. Not much change noticed in the Atlantic. Around Greenland, the water's pretty much the same, which would also indicate a more troughiness in this area, which would argue that there is going to be a battle of a ridge across the nation's heartland, that it's going to be influenced by Alaska. I mean, there's going to be a dip at some point in the east, but how much of a dip is that going to be? Is it going to be in the nation's heartland, or is it going to be more slanted off the eastern seaboard and become more of a winter for the Great Lakes in the Northeast? And I think that's what it's trying to pick up on, is a driver on the eastern dip, but it's this western portion. Notice how it was much warmer in July for the Pacific Ocean compared to what it has. Still, both had warm, but it was warmer, and not as much La Nina. If we had more blue showing up here, it would be a stronger La Nina. In July, it indicated nearly neutral, but the latest forecast, not dramatic, but it does show it. In fact, when you look at the La Nina chart that's coming in, the forecast on the left is La Nina. Now notice, this is the blue line's what's been recorded so far. Once you get below the 0.5, you're getting into La Nina status. You've got to hold it for 3 consecutive months, by the way, or 3 consecutive updates. And notice we're entering that zone. Now, it does get us back to neutral territory in the spring, but in general, it is showing La Nina. Now, back in July, it's hard to read here, but it pretty much had us bottoming out about that point and then beginning to lift back up again as we head toward the winter and kind of balancing out very close to neutral. So, at this point in the season, the JAMSTEC was averaging out the idea that we'd be very close to neutral in October, and at the moment, we are certainly more into the negative territory. So La Nina is showing up a little more prevalent than what was forecast. In fact, I believe NOAA issued a La Nina watch again. They had this one, they took it back out, they issued a La Nina watch again for the oceans for this kind of a setup. So La Nina may become a factor again. We'll see. I got more stuff to look at for the winter forecast, which will come out on Halloween, but this is an interesting trend from the JAMSTEC and a good basis to look at when it comes to how the winter may play out. And that is just your one other piece of nugget that I'm giving you on what I'm looking at. Have a good day.